Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is To Back or Not to Back, where we're going to go through a variety of crowdfunding campaigns, talking about whether you should get them, whether you shouldn't, the pledge levels, all those things, some general information about the game, all the stuff you typically expect to see over on this channel. I will say, I'm a little, might be able to hear it in my voice, but I'm a little under the weather, so I might try to keep it a little briefer than usual, just so that I'm not talking for like an hour. Maybe if I could do 45 minutes, that'd be great. If I could do less than that, maybe even better. I do have some seltzer with me just in case to, drink a little bit as necessary, but either way, let's do the best we can, see how it goes, and we'll make our way through it. As usual, timestamps and links to everything down below, and with that, let's go ahead and start off, but starting off as usual with our Cult of the Now. Crowdfunding is full of a lot of games that tempt you, that make you interested, that make you want them now, and Cult of the Now is, well, the game you can actually get now. You see that crowdfunding game you just backed, you might not see it for a year and a half, sometimes not even at all, unfortunately, and Cult of the Now is a reminder you can get great games now, and this one's actually a little bit disappointing, although good depending on your point of view, which would be a Small City Deluxe Edition and Winter Expansion. This was available for $100, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago over on crowdfunding. I will say, you only can get this if you are watching this video in like the first hour or two of it being up, because that's how long this deal is good for over on Game Nerds, but they currently have this game available for $70. It was on crowdfunding for $100, which means if you waited for this whole Cult of the Now segment, this is another opportunity to remind you that you're not always getting the best price either. But anyways, Small City. You can go to check out reviews, see if it's a game for you, and if it is, this is a fairly good price to go ahead and get the game at. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into the actual To Back or Not to Back. Although, of course, usual disclaimer, I work for GameFound, please take that into account. I've been working for GameFound for a little over a year and a half at this point, but been doing this crowdfunding series for around 4 years now, but take any potential biases into account, and with that, let's go ahead and start off the video. Starting off with our board game adjacent category. This specifically is going to be a RPG. Specifically, we have the Marvel Multiverse RPG, a deluxe starter set. In fact, this is not only the board game adjacent category, this is also the crowdfunding adjacent category, because this is actually a pre-order. This is not a crowdfunding campaign. This is the first pre-order over on GameFound. The first pre-order that GameFound has done. I'm sure there'll be more coming in the future, but this is the first pre-order ever, which in case you are confused, in case you hop on over to this page and you click follow because you think that's all you need to do, no, you can go ahead and get the Marvel RPG right now if you want. This is a pre-order from Command Games. You've probably seen them do this on other platforms. This is their first one over on the GameFound platform. Now that we've made sure you know that you can go ahead and back this, or pre-order this, I guess, because it's not technically crowdfunding. What is the Marvel RPG? Well, basically it's a Marvel RPG. As usual, my RPG dives are usually not that in-depth. I don't have a good sense of, all the differences, the nuances, and all those things, but we have a multiverse role-playing game. It's going to be taking place in the Marvel Universe, going to give you a bit of a story, a starting baseline to get into. That's not supposed to be too overwhelming. This is the $30 starter set to go ahead and pull you into it using a D6 system where when you roll ones, it actually is good for you in some way, shape, or form, but the rest of the numbers, like 2 is now technically the lowest number, depending on how you count that. I guess 6 is still the highest number. 1 has a benefit to it. Either way, they have a bunch of systems behind it. I did read through the page. I kind of have, I'm pulling the snippets from the page. The enter the D616 system. All that kind of stuff over here. But ultimately, this is an RPG with acrylic standees. Fun little acrylic standees if you are interested in those, both in the core set and additional ones available as optional buys as well. And as usual, the way Marvel tends to work with licenses, the fact that we have like a female Wolverine over here does make me wonder if that's going to be coming our way in the MCU anytime soon. Generally, historically speaking, when Command has done, a Marvel content, the things that they have done that don't currently exist in the MCU, very often, but not always, have made their way into the MCU eventually soon after, which means I do wonder about that whole female Wolverine concept. Also, I haven't watched Deadpool yet. I don't know, maybe, I have no clue. I don't know anything. I don't know. I watched the original Deadpool. It's not the new Deadpool coming out soon. Anyways, that's going to be your Marvel RPG, and for that, let's go ahead and dive into the, well, I think that's everything as far as why do I have 2 of these tabs open? I don't know why I have 2 of these open. Let's go ahead and dive into the cancelled and not funding category. In the cancelled and not yet funding category, we just have one over here. We have Zombie Horde, which is cancelled over here. This raised $88,000 on a $25,000 goal, which of course brings that typical frustration of, hey, this isn't a real real funding goal, which clearly not. But effectively, this is coming to you from Darkgate Games, and they've done a bunch of games from Dark. Oh my gosh, I always forget the names of the titles. Dark Rituals, I want to say, and Neomorphosis, and then Vampire something, the Vampire Order of Ancient Blood. They have a bunch of games games under their belt, but this one over here, Zombie Horde, is their newest one, bringing you a bit of a combination of base building and then zombie survival system. So you're going to be managing and running a base, but then also wandering out into the wild to deal with the various zombies and hopefully survive and make your way back to base with the various upgrades and ingredients you need to go ahead and enhance and upgrade your base, so you can go ahead and rinse and repeat that cycle. That's the general idea of the game. I'm not doing a full deep dive into it because, well, it canceled. They basically said, hey, you know, we saw a lot of people from our usual base weren't really here for it. We spoke to our audience. A big part of it is, you know, a combination of the graphics of the game itself, a combination of the fact that one of their games hasn't yet delivered, and so they want to hold off on that. They basically said, hey, we're going to go ahead, we're going to bring this back, which, by the way, they've done in the past with several of their campaigns. They've canceled and then relaunched based on how well that initial field did do. But either way, Zombie Horde will be coming back at some point. It seems like we're looking at several months from now, probably like, you know, 3 to 6 months from now. That's going to be Zombie Horde coming back to you from Darkgate Games. Moving on, we have Dante Inferno starting off in our official crowdfunding category with 3 days left. This was a short campaign. I did not realize how short this campaign was going to be. We have Dante Inferno from Creative Game Studios. $1.3 million or $1.4 million already on this campaign. 4,500 backers on this one. This brings you Dante Inferno, a boss battling system that, well, has an absolute ton of stuff to it. This is like, there's a lot of things to go into here. So let's start with the basic over here. This is Dante Inferno. This is a boss battling game. This is going to be bringing you a sequence of adventures in which you go through a chronicle phase, which is a bit of a story phase, followed by a confrontation phase, which is where you ultimately take down the various bosses you're fighting off against. Meanwhile, you're managing your characters, engaging with a full-on boss battler, dealing with the reactions of the boss to your attacks. Very often, the things that are going to be dealt to you are based on the reactions of the enemy that you're fighting off against, but they also have their own, you know, their own enemy phase as well, where they'll be attacking you as well, and you have to kind of manage and mitigate around those things. You can check out full review coverage from my channel, from King of Average, from a bunch of other channels. You can check out playthrough coverage from I believe Rolling Solo had, One Stop Co-op Shop had. There's a lot of content out there on this game in case you are interested in seeing if this is a game for you. And that's important because you can spend, well, $99 on this game and get, you know, a very basic, you know, Explorer pledge, which gives you the base game, the Coliseum, and the how do you say it? Is it Charon? Is it Karen? I don't know. The ferry expansion over here. You can get all those over here on the base pledge over here. But you can also go ahead and go all the way up to spending $399 on everything for the game, and that does include a lot of extras that you might not care about. If you want like all these extra, well, things, all the add-ons, all the unlocks are going to be in there. So don't go ahead and jump straight to the all-in if you are an all-in person, because that's not a gameplay all-in. That's an all-in, and it may be more than you're actually interested in getting for this game. And there's an intermediate pledge over here, the Crusader pledge, for $185, bringing you the core box, the character miniature pack, and the you know, all those expansions over here. So if you want all the miniatures, that's going to basically near double the size of your pledge, but bring you a lot more of a, you know, this is the OS1 model. We got like 3 levels. We got your base box, we got your miniatures box, and then we have the all-in with all the various stuff going on over here. That's going to be the general pledge levels for Dante over here, and they are broken down to further add-ons in case you want to customize that further. You're not limited to just those 3 options. So once again, going through some of these options over here, we have a bunch of stretch goals being unleashed from various characters and terrain and all these extra things being added. You can go through the stretch goals. Again, like I said, I'm not going to do as full of a deep dive as usual, trying to keep my voice a bit reasonably not too taxed over here. We have your character miniature pack for $89, your environment miniature pack for $69 over there, your foretelling narration, your Dante Poet, your pristine champion, your tainted champion. Those are going to be 2 different champion packs, meaning more gameplay content as far as more characters to dive into, which I guess if you're replaying the game is going to be helpful to give you that extra variety. If this is a game system you're going to play through once and move on from it, I mean, I know your own habits as far as what you do, then you don't need more characters if you're going to just be, you know, you're going to have the base characters anyway. Unless you're replaying through this, you don't need to go ahead and buy those extra characters. So just factor in, again, I think this is a great game. I was a big fan of the experience I got, although I only got one scenario to go through, but, you know, again, just because it's a great experience, you can spend $100, you can spend $400, you can spend nothing. There's a lot of ways to spend money trying to decide what this is right for you. You have your deluxe player trays, you have the deluxe terrain, which will upgrade the plastic, you know, terrain, you know, levelers that you have in the base game. You have your Neophene playmat, your art book, your metal tokens, and your dice pack. Now again, remember, all of this stuff over here, as I scroll through this, if any of these things were like, you're like thinking mentally, well, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that, well, they're all going to be present and taken into account price-wise in this Dante Inferno Eternal all-in pledge. So break down the cost of the things you actually do want, compare it to that, because you are getting a savings if you get it all, and then see what you're interested in. I'm not encouraging you to get it or not get it, I'm just saying, just do the price, do the math on what you want, and then compare that to the Eternal box, and go from there to try to see which pledge option is right for you. They have a full breakdown over here as well, going through, you know, what you're getting as a GameFound exclusives, all that stuff. That's basically what you're looking at for Dante Infernos. You have our chapter boxes over here. I like the game. I like the game a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's got some great art, great production. You get either great standees or great miniatures, depending on the pleasure levels you go through. Don't forget to take into account the shipping prices as well, because shipping is going to add as well. Let's scroll down over here and jump down to shipping if I can find it. Where's my sidebar? Sidebar, I can't even see it over here because my camera's blocking it. Shipping information, there we go. So if you scroll into shipping information over here, you're going to have this, again, looking anywhere from $27 to $93 for US shipping. That's a big extra jump depending on what you're looking at, so just take all that into account. As far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? Short version is, I do think it'll hold its value. This coming to you from Creative Game Studios, and they are putting out a good game. Like, this thing's going to end at probably in the just shy of $2 million range if I had to guess, and there is a lot of demand for this one, and it is a good game. I've seen a lot of people compare or ask if it's, how similar it is to Oathsworn, and while I do think the games are different, I think this is a little bit more accessible than Oathsworn is at the cost of some of the nuance and depth that's present, but I think they both very much have their spot, and make no mistake, I think there's a decent chance that it depends when it shows up. If I had everything today, I think I would finish this before Oathsworn. I think it's easier to dive into because of that. And so I think that there's a lot of good game going on here, but you are looking at spending between $100 to $400. So do I think it'll hold this value? Yes, I do think it'll hold this value. Creative Game Studios games have done fairly well in the secondhand market. They do put out very quality games, at least so far as their game production and their game quality and how well they've been received. So I do think it'll hold this value, but you don't need to spend $400 on this if it's not something that you're, looking to spend $400 on. You can get the $100 option. Again, know yourself and know what you typically have done with your own games. If you get a game, get really super excited about it, play it twice, and move on from it, you don't need to spend $400 to do that. You can spend $100 or $0 to do that same thing. Versus if you are the type of person who has really loved your games and really wanted to dive into them, then that's where you kind of know whether you're looking at that $100, the $200, or the $400 threshold, or anything in between. So holding its value, sure, doesn't mean you should absolutely get everything. Know yourself and back and buy accordingly. Moving on, we have a much cheaper game. We have Forks 2nd Edition, brought to you by the person in my last video who said, hey, can you cover Forks this week? And the answer is yes. For whatever reason, this wasn't on any of my lists. I didn't have this on any of my lists of campaigns to cover. That does happen, although it is infrequent. More often than not, if I don't cover a game, it's usually because it might have been on my list, but I thought it was too small, that there wasn't enough interest or attention, and I'm always trying to limit just how much goes into a single video. But in the case of Forks, well, I'm only here because of that one person last video who commented. Anyways, coming to you from Radical A Games, we have Forks. Forks is going to be a small little drafting game. That's all it is, a fast little 10-pound drafting game. Well, the game itself's not 10 pounds, the cost of the game is 10 pounds, but I can see how that'd be confusing, especially after we just covered Dante, which is going to weigh a whole lot more than 10 pounds. But the basic idea is you're drafting cards over here. You're drafting cards, and the cards are going into your own personal tableau. The cards that don't get picked go into the center, which determine the value of the cards, and then from there you go ahead and score. It's a system I've seen done in similar ways. It's a little bit done in modern art. Art Society. Art Society has a little bit of that going on. Modern Art has a little bit of that going on. There's a bunch of games that have that kind of, determine the pool, determine the pot. I think Evergreen had a little bit of that going on. Was it Evergreen? Or a similar system? There's a lot of games that do that kind of system, but this one looks like it's distilling it just to that core concept. Like, hey, forget having a whole, $40 game with a whole bunch of mechanics on top of it. This one core concept is going to be the game of Forks. That's basically what's going on here. That seems to be the pitch, the appeal. Looks like they're leaning into 2nd edition over here because the 1st edition has sold out. And so we have our 2nd edition of Forks for £10 for the game. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value, all of that stuff. Oh, and there's a sleeves pledge available as well if you want that. The short answer is probably not. These games, typically small box games, once you factor in the shipping and the cost, they generally don't do a great job holding their value, but they often, especially something small like this, it might be your best opportunity to get your hands on it without trying to wait and hunt down and all that stuff. So I think if you want this, whatever, you're talking about a few bucks difference, go ahead and get it. But if you're looking for something that'll hold its value, I just don't think it would. But again, I think it's cheap. If you're interested, go for it. I encourage you to try and find new things, although also question if you're actually interested in it. That's, 15 pounds is still 15 pounds. A lot of things you can do with that. You can buy 3 coffees with 15 pounds, and that will last you, not as long as a game will, but you'll be happier for it, so there's that. Moving on, we have Button Shy Reprint Campaign. Speaking of cheap things that won't hold their value, but I do encourage you to go ahead and get your hands on it if you're interested in them, we have the Button Shy Reprint Campaign. This is bringing you, $40,000 so far, 1,300 backers so far. This is the Button Shy Reprint Campaign, something they do, I think a few times a year, where they basically pick a variety of their games, they add the old things, they add some new things, and they say, here you go ahead and pick and choose what you want. It's not a singular new title, it's an option to get any of their previous existing things. We have these 4 games over here, so we have 4 games, which are going to be the current 4 games, and something they do. I don't know if they're doing it this one yet, but something they generally do is they do add to the list of games. So right now they have 4, but they might have more going through it. But those 4 games currently are Numpsters, Skulls of Sedlec, Seasons of Rice, and At the Helm. I've played Numpsters, I've played Skulls of Sedlec, I've played Seasons of Rice. I don't even know At the Helm, so I don't know anything about that one. As far as those games, I think Numpsters is delightful. Highly encourage that one. It's a great little solo game. It's become one of my go-to travel games. I absolutely plan on getting this, like, you know, dollar little expansion pack, because whatever, 2 more cards for Numpsters, I'll take it, and I do encourage it. I've gifted a few copies. I want copies of this. I think it's a great, fun solo travel game. Then we have Skulls of Sedlec, which is my personal favorite Button Shy game by a long shot. I mean, I love Button Shy games in general. Well, that's not true. I love some of the games Button Shy puts out, and some of them are not for me, but I love plenty of them, and Skulls of Sedlec is the one I like the most from all the ones that I enjoy. It's my favorite 2-player game. I actually haven't played the solo mode yet. I should do that. I have the solo mode, just haven't played it. I have all the stuff they have up until this new stuff, and they do have new stuff here, very handily tagged with that brand new. We have 3 new expansions. We got our Archers, Farmers, and Troubadours over here if you want to get more Skulls of Sedlec expansion content, which again, you can guarantee that I'll be getting that over there. But you also have the Monstrance solo expansion and the Crown of Bone solo expansion if you want any of those available solo expansions for the game, as well as any of their previous release things for Skulls of Sedlec. Highly encourage that game. I think it's fantastic. We have Seasons of Rice, which this is going to be giving you Jasmine and Ginger, which I guess are new. I'm not sure about that, but either way, the options to go ahead and get that. Seasons of Rice is a little kind of a tile laying game, except they're cards, where you're laying down cards and overlaying the cards to try to score based on a variety of things. I thought it was okay. It wasn't one of the Button Shy games that fully impressed me. I actually have coming out soon-ish. I don't know if it'll be before this campaign ends. I have like 6 Button Shy reviews. I think the only one that's relevant to this campaign currently is Seasons of Rice. It'll come out at some point. I just have it in the queue at some point, but either way, that'll be coming out. And again, Seasons of Rice I think is fine, but it's not one that personally impressed me. And then we have At the Helm, which, like I said already, I didn't even know. There's not even a picture here. There's not even a picture here, which is a shame, but I don't know anything about that one, unfortunately, so I can't comment on that one. That's basically what we got over there. So we got 4 games over here. We have all the new content for those games as well, and that's going to be your 4 games, and of course, new expansion content if you want to dive into any of those for these games. And there's a variety. You can check out these 10 pocket-sized games, see other things from Button Shy. There's a lot of Button Shy content out there, and I think, oh, here we have the At the Helm stuff over here. Again, I haven't played this one, so I can't comment on that one. Anyways, that's going to be a Button Shy stuff over here. As far as should you back or should you not will hold its value, generally for Button Shy games, what I typically say is usually most Button Shy games don't hold their value. The cost of the game is so cheap, the cost of shipping, they make great gifts. If you ever are done with a Button Shy game, I highly encourage gifting them. I've gifted a lot of Button Shy games away over the years because I usually either keep them, or I like them enough that I buy extra copies to gift, or give away my copy and buy a new copy for myself. I've done that several times with several of their games, or I move on from them, and again, they make great gifts because they're usually harder to sell. They're small, cheap games. It's usually not worth the hassle. So I don't think they're going to hold their value in a typical sense, but if you are interested in them, generally their crowdfunding campaigns are usually the cheapest and easiest way to get your hands on their things. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and order from Button Shy at any given point, and you can actually go ahead and get a Button Shy bag if you visit their actual store. I'm realizing, as I said, that you can't actually get a Button Shy bag online or in their campaigns. They've done it in their campaigns in the past, but right now you can only get it at their store, so I apologize for disappointing you with that. It's a little fun little bag that's specifically designed to hold Button Shy games. There goes my throat. It's a little fun little bag that's specifically designed to hold Button Shy games, and it's adorable, although it does take away from the travelability of any one Button Shy. It is great for if you're carrying a bunch of Button Shies. Anyways, let's move on to larger games. We've got 2 small box games, then we have a larger one over here. We have Street Masters Champion Editions. I think we can maybe do 45 minutes. I don't think we're going to do less than 45 minutes in this video. It's going to be hard. Either way, Street Masters Champion Editions. 2,169 backers, $270,000 raised. This is Street Masters coming to you from Steamforged Games. And if you're like, isn't Street Masters from Blacklist Games? You're not wrong. It was. Well, yes, you are wrong. It was from Blacklist Games, so you're wrong, but you're coming from a good place. It was from Blacklist Games. Blacklist Games is, it seems like Blacklist Games is basically no more at this point. I mean, they still exist, but it seems like Colossal took over a bunch of the stuff. Steamforged took over a bunch of the stuff. They took over AltarQuest and Street Masters, and I don't know what Blacklist does or doesn't do at this point, but they don't really exist, which, I don't wish anyone at the company now, then, or present any ill will, but also kind of makes sense. Anyways, Street Masters Champion Edition over here. We have this is bringing you all the Street Masters content as well as a new expansion content. Now, there's a lot of things to get into here, and I'm not going to get into all those things because again, time, voice, and all those things. But I will say, if you are a previous Street Masters backer who is waiting on their stuff, I highly recommend checking out the FAQ. It covers a lot of the things for you. Anyone who backed on Indiegogo, there are those people who may be waiting on stuff. Part of what Steamforged seems to have done is basically guarantee deliveries on previous things, which as usual, I highly recommend if you are a backer or whether or not you are a a backer, I highly recommend you just say thank you to Steam Forge Games, to the fact that they are taking over a project and giving you your pledge. It's one of those things where people often look at the companies and they sit there and say, well, now you owe me this, or why aren't you doing this, or any of these various things, and especially with everything going on with, Command taking over from Mythic Games and stuff, whenever a company basically takes on someone else's problem and then gives you something, however much that is, I think some degree of appreciation is a good thing. And you don't have to. You can do what you want. I feel I feel appreciation is a good thing, especially if you're getting basically everything you were supposed to get anyway, even more so then because someone's rescuing someone else's problem and you are the beneficiary of them rescuing that problem. They might also be doing it for their own selfish motivations of, making money on things. That's totally fine. But if someone does you a favor, even if they benefit, you should still thank them. It's just, just good stuff, I think. Anyways, Street Masters, Steam Forge Games. So basically, there's going to be a few things here. They are giving you a whole bunch of new content, all-in pledges, at a reduced price compared to the previous original all-in pledges of the various things from Blacklist Games. But there's also new content for anyone who wants the new content, specifically the Lament of the Blood Moon expansion over here. That's going to be £39 for the Lament of the Blood Moon expansion. We're giving you new characters, new enemies, new stuff to go through over there in the game. And then past that, if there's anything from your streamlined entry point into Street Masters universe for £55. It's giving you the ability to jump into the cheapest price point of Street Masters because it's usually not been a cheap game historically speaking. We have the new Challenger pledge for £111. Then we have the Global Gladiator pledge for $285, which is basically bringing you everything for Street Masters at a reduced price point and save $43. My throat was doing great for the first 17 minutes, but now, jeez. It's almost like if you talk too much when you have a sore throat and a cold, it's not great for you. Global Gladiator pledge. Save $43 on a previous crowd. That's actually a little confusing because they have it listed in pounds with a rough approximation for dollars, but the price savings is given in dollars. Either way, basically, that's going to be giving you a price point break on compared to the original Street Masters content, giving you all the things for Street Masters if you want that. That's the basic idea over here. Now, as far as what Street Masters is, in case you don't know, Street Masters is a solo and or cooperative street fighting game, but it basically takes place on a grid. You can see the grid on the screen over here in front of us. You're going to have a little grid. You're going to have your fighters. Your fighters are slowly powering up using the MDS system, the modular deck system from the oh my gosh, Sadlers. It's Brady and Adam Sadler brothers who are involved in this new content and new expansion. They are back to game design, which is great because the whole Blacklist thing kind of seemed to burn them completely out of any interest in being in the board game space, understandably so I'm glad to see them back. They've done tremendous stuff in the board game world, and I'm happy that they're not completely burnt out because I just think that's cool that your passion shouldn't be completely and totally extinguished by somebody else's actions. Anyways, Street Masters over here. So, it's basically going to be giving you the MDS system where you are going to be powering up your Street Masters that you're playing as while dealing with the threat in front of you. The general idea, like many cooperative games, is you do good things, game does bad things. In this case, the game doing the bad things is them trying to unleash all their fury on you, which is going to be stronger than you can deal with unless you can power up enough and fast enough. This game has often been compared to Sentinels in the Multiverse, just, it's very, very comparable in terms of the feeling you get from them. In both of them, you start off not powerful enough. In both of them, you have enemies that are slowly crushing you down. In both of them, you are able to power up your heroes, and if you can stay alive long enough to be able to see your heroes fully power up, you can then take down the baddies. And there's tons of content for this game. There's absolutely tons of content. In fact, I once did a video on a play this, not that between Marvel Champions and Street Masters, because I've actually seen people ask about Marvel Champions versus Street Masters. And if you're like, Alex, I've never seen that video, you're right, because it was one of like 5 videos way back in the day that I completely lost. And when I first started doing YouTube content, there were like 5 videos I lost and 1 hard drive crash and fail. One of them was a Cthulhu Death May Die versus the others, a play this, not that between those. One of them was Street Masters versus Marvel Champions. I don't even remember the other ones at this point, but those are videos I was very happy with, and I didn't reshoot them because it's hard to reshoot videos sometimes. It takes a lot of the energy out of you to be like, I have to do the same thing again. There's a lot of tangents in this video, which isn't really the goal for when I'm trying to talk less, but it is what it is. Anyway, Street Masters over here. That's basically the idea of the game. It's a solo and or cooperative game. You could control multiple characters yourself, you can control a single character yourself, or you can control multiple characters with your friends. Or I guess if you're being really adventurous, you can control a single character with your friends too. I mean, listen, it's your game, do what you want with it. That's basically the idea over here. It is a well-rated, well-liked game. It's a 8.0 on BGG. It's been in a lot of top lists from a lot of solo and cooperative content creators. One Stop Co-op Shop, I believe, is in as a top 10 at one point. I don't know if it still is, but I've really enjoyed the game. To me at the time, I remember I don't actually currently have it right now, but I am kind of like torn as to I do want it back. Like I chose, for context, I chose Marvel Champions over Street Masters. I don't know, man. this is the FOMO part of me where I'm just seeing on crowdfunding and kind of wanting it. I probably shouldn't get it, but I did like the game a lot. It was a lot of fun to basically build up your characters and just attack the baddies and do what you need to do. It was a lot of fun. It was very, very strong. I think between Sentinels of Multiverse and Marvel Champions and Street Masters, you definitely don't need all three. But I do want all three. That's basically the game over here. As far as should you back or should you not will hold its value, it's hard to say with these kinds of things because it's been so long since the last time, but instinctively I believe so. The original Street Masters did find holding its value, and even now if you look at the secondhand market, especially because it's coming from a company that basically doesn't really exist as far as we're concerned, it does seem like it still is holding its value. No guarantees that it will in the future, but the fact that it's a cheaper price point coming from a more established, more consistent company, and the fact that it is a very popular, very well-liked game, I do think this is a decent one that will likely hold its value, but of course, no guarantees. No guarantees on anything. There's always no guarantees. It's always just, armchair advice based on what I've seen in the space. Moving on, we have Black Rose Wars. Black Rose Wars Rebirth, Enter the Lodge. 138,000 euro raised, 355 backers. This is basically similar to what they did with Nova Aetus Renaissance, where they basically said, hey, we have more content for this game, and well, not more content for this game, that's not entirely true, other way around actually. They said, hey, we already printed this game, and we have 1,000 copies we can go ahead and sell, because a bunch of you have wanted this game. We already did a crowdfunding campaign, but if those of you who want the game, we can go ahead and give you this option to go ahead and get it now, so you can get it as soon as possible. And I guess the remainder of these copies will go available on their web store, or conventions, or all of that kind of situation, because that's basically what they do whenever a company, prints. They say, hey, we got, 3,000 orders, we're going to print 4,000 copies, and we'll sell the rest, because, capitalism, and that's how money works, and production works, and all those things. So that's kind of what's going on over here. Similar thing to what they did in Nova Aetus, and similar to Nova Aetus, the price point on this campaign, because I've seen a bunch of people who are frustrated at, Ludus Magnus Studios saying, well, it seems unfair that I waited so long for this game, and then, my game's not even delivered yet, and they're already selling more games, and the answer to that is yes. But the people buying these games are also paying a higher price point than you paid. The price point for these games over here, they're giving you a specific singular bundle you can get your hands on. There's not a bunch of variety of options. There is just the 400 euro bundle to go ahead. If you want this game, you can't do anything other than the 400 euro bundle. I'm pretty sure. Let me just double check that. That was true with Nova Aetus, but I'm pretty sure it's true here. Yeah, 400 euro. That's all you can do. You just get a bundle of the Black Rose Wars Rebirth content for 400 euro. And it's a higher price point, so you have less freedom and flexibility, and you're paying more if you get it over here. In theory, these price points are still cheaper than retail, or cheaper than their web store later, but they are more expensive than their crowdfunding campaign. So anyone who backed this game originally, you shouldn't be complaining. You're getting this you got it at a better price point with more flexibility as to what you get. That said, they're basically giving you the bundle over here with, it seems like most, if not all, of the content from the original campaign, although at a higher price point, because again, you see the whole aspect of everything I said there, which makes sense. You don't want your backers to feel like there's never a reason to back your content. You want your backers to feel rewarded for backing your games, and it's weird when you have subsequent more versions of your backers at different phases, but if it works, it works. As far as Black Rose Wars, what is the game? Because let's talk about that too. Black Rose Wars Rebirth, tangents. Black Rose Wars Rebirth is a mage fighting game in which 1 to 4 mages, or 2 to 4 mages, is it even a solo mode? I'm not even sure if it's a solo mode. Oh, that's right. Black Rose Wars Rebirth did bring a solo mode. I'm trying to remember from when I covered the game a while ago. But either way, so 1 to 4 mages effectively are fighting in this slightly hard programming, large rebuilding game. Because the original Black Rose Wars had the lodge being torn down. Black Rose Wars Rebirth, as the name implies, has the lodge being restored, which tomato effectively has the same kind of general concept, but you're going through the game and slowly manipulating the tiles and terrain around you while you try to fight against other mages. Meanwhile, you're engaging in a programmatic system where you kind of plan your spells in sequence with some degree but very little flexibility, so you have just a tiny bit of flexibility as you try to plan through how you're going to approach this particular turn and then play out all your turns, your actions one at a time, going through the sequence and trying to tear down your opponents from a whole host of card decks, because you're also engaging in a degree of deck building in the experience where you're building out your decks with certain types of spells and cards, trying to utilize the best combination of them to take down your opponents in this deck building, programming, spell casting, mage dueling game. Lots of keywords and buzzwords, but ultimately that's what the game is. The other I had a second ago was if you are backing on this game, there's also the opportunity to get your hands on Black Rose Wars Duel, which is a 2-player version that was only directly to retail. So if you are getting this here, you have the option of getting that as an add-on. That's basically everything for the campaign, which brings us to the should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? I'm not going to do 45 minutes in this video. It's not going to happen. Should you back or should you not? Will it hold its value and all that stuff? Instinctively, I think not on this one. And I have the same problem with Nova Aetus, where it's kind of hard to say for sure, because if the game is only available at a higher price point later, then this is still the best price point. But at the same time, Black Rose Wars has been around for a long time. It has done a good job holding its value originally. Over time, it has shifted downwards. Rebirth definitely ignited more interest, but from the 1,000 copies that they're trying to sell over here, or up to 1,000 copies, they have 355 so far, and sure, that number number will go higher. Maybe it'll cross 500, but you're definitely not seeing that, you know, complete tearing into those 1,000 copies. There's definitely available supply to fill that demand. And that means if people aren't willing to pay that price point right now, then how many of those people are willing to pay that price point later? I think your original Black Rose Wars Rebirth is still a decent chance of holding its value because you got it at a cheaper price point. This slightly more expensive version, I think it, you know, eventually down the road as supply, you know, starts clogging up and it gets harder, or supply starts drying up and you don't have enough of it, yeah, eventually for sure. There's always that option. But I think instinctively, you're going to be competing at this higher price point with people who are just selling the pledges at the price point they paid for it because they've already had 17 other Kickstarters come in the meantime and they don't feel they need that particular game anymore. So instinctively, I think it's a little less likely that this one will hold its value overall. Moving on, we have Inferno Deluxe Edition from Red Mojo Games. €187,000 raise, 1,700 backers. This is basically the second game from Red Mojo Games. They did Tindaya, which I actually have on my shelf. I really need to cover that one. But either way, we have Inferno from them, and this one is basically bringing you a deluxe version of this Euro game where souls are slowly descending into hell in the game. That's the basic idea of the game. They have a whole Why Back Now section, by the way, which is really well written. I think it's a good job. Go ahead and read through that. It covers the usual stuff, but just with more clarity, more transparency. In fact, they had a few things in the campaign that I thought were, but they talk about their timeline later on in the campaign. I thought the timeline did a good job focusing on like, hey, here's what we're gonna do, but here's the timeline, and expect this timeline, but also expect that things will go wrong because things typically do go wrong, which I've always said. My old job used to be, I was COO of my old company. I worked in development, and I used to try to say, like, development, people always think that an estimate is what you should expect. An estimate is not what you should expect. An estimate is if everything goes right, this is how long it should take. But in practice, there are almost always things that go wrong. The amount of things that can make a project take shorter versus the amount of things that can make a project take longer, those are widely imbalanced scales as far as the way things go. So an estimate is like, hey, whatever. Anyways, you get the point. The point is they warn you with that. They're not just saying, hey, here's a timeline. They're saying expect delays because delays do happen, but in theory, here's the timeline, and we'll update you as things go along. Great transparency. I appreciate that from Red Mojo Games. Past that, as far as this game over here, Inferno, not to be confused with Dante's Inferno, which is of course launching the exact same day as Inferno, because of course it is that's the way it is. And you ever remember like movies? If you ever follow movies, there's always these movies that come out at the same time. Like, and this is going way back, but like I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. There's movies that will frequently come out at the same time with similar themes. And it's always confusing. You're like, why did these two things have to come out the same, like, few months apart as opposed to just years apart, where it would have felt less like a coincidence? And either way, same thing happens in board games all the time. But we're going to go ahead and dive into this. Inferno, you're going to be ferrying souls down into hell. The basic idea of the game is you have these souls. The souls are slowly moving down, and they trigger various worker placement zones. As you move a soul onto a spot, it basically opens up where you can engage with the worker placement puzzle going on, and that's going to be a little bit of a game as you slowly try to get control of different areas, because souls lie and rest at certain points. Depending on the color of the soul, they lie at rest at certain phases of descending deeper into hell. Meanwhile, there's additional monsters or gods, whatever it is that you're controlling, that have an extra degree of influence on the board. You're trying to be mindful of those. You're trying to be mindful of all the various worker placement zones, trying to get control of various zones on the board, trying to ensure that you are the one who's scoring as many points as possible, and that's kind of a light overview. I have a full rules video, I have a full review video that is definitely not a full rules video. Yeah, I'm sure there is. I actually don't know for sure if there's a full rules overview. There's a lot of moving parts in this game. My review video does a general overview, trying to give you as much information without getting into the nitty-gritty, but you can find more about the game and how it works, on maybe other stuff. I didn't go through all the videos. I know Board Game Dave has a video on it. You can check that out. Past that, as far as the game over here, this is basically for the deluxe version of the game. If you go to the pledges over here, they're basically only giving you a deluxe option there. That's all it is. The retail option will come later. This is basically the opportunity to make a version of the game that otherwise wouldn't exist. And that's going to be the €79 Inferno Deluxe Edition over here. And then the €120, which gives you a bunch of extras, including the Neophene mat, which is adding all in metal coins and extras and Neophenes and sleeves and all these things, which you may not care. Actually, I don't know if they're sleeves. There's like bags. I think these are sleeves. I'm not certain if they're sleeves. But past that, we have the Inferno Sinners Edition, which I think is sleeves. Sleeves. No coin bags. No. Premium card sleeves. It is indeed premium card sleeves. We also have the metal coins over here. So there's 3 different pledge levels. It's €79 for the basic, €98 to get some of the extras at a, slightly better version or whatnot. And then we also have the Medusa version, which gives you absolutely everything, including the Neophene mat, if you want any of that. As far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? And of course, a variety of stretch goals, but, see previous notes on my voice and the fact that we're probably not going to do this video in 45 minutes. But as far as, Should You Back or Should You Not will hold its value. Looking at Red Mojo's previous game, Tandaya, unfortunately, that one has a similar kind of, deluxe version, retail edition, and while the game seems to have been fairly decently received overall, the price point of the original crowdfunding campaign versus the price point on the secondhand market doesn't seem to have held up quite as much, and so instinctively, I do feel it's going to fall into a similar zone where, if you want the game, by all means, go ahead and get it. I think it's less likely for it to be holding its value. Moving on, we have Boardquest, Tales of Liria, 139 backers, $14,000 raised, 16 days to go, bringing you a medieval RPG, RTS, real-time strategy, except not actually real-time strategy, but, in theory, that kind of concept. An RTS/RPG kind of experience as you control your various factions on this board, wander around, kill people, engage in a slightly abstract, slightly RPG, slightly 4X experience, but not actually 4X experience in this game. That's going to be Tales of Liria over here. There's also a video game for €15 if you want the video game, giving you the video game option to dive into the game, or you have for €45 the miniatures, which just by themselves, if you want the miniatures by themselves. You have €65 for the Sport Game Standard Edition. We have €75 for the board game and the video game, and then we have €85 for the board game Premium Edition, which is the miniatures and the board game all together. So a bunch of ways to go ahead and get everything. Oh wait, €95 for the board game and video game and premium and miniatures. I forgot there's one more pledge over there. And then anything above that is just going to retailer pledges. That's basically the game over here. Without going heavily into this one, this is a RPG/RTS. You have multiple unit types. You're going to be moving around the board, trying to take control of all that. There's more testimonials and all that stuff. It does look interesting. I think the art, the miniatures look decent. I think the board art could be better. Ultimately, I'm not sure if I feel confident enough of this one, and also price point as well, which brings us, I guess, to the Should You Back It, which is, I'm skeptical this one will hold its value. If you're interested in this game as a supporting an indie developer, by all means, but if you're looking at this game as something that might be for you or might not, it's promising. There's a lot of keywords and buzz phrases and all those things that, it's easy to learn, hard to master, which is great, except that's a very easy to say buzz phrase that is said about a lot of games. The amount of games I've seen that phrase about, it doesn't really tell you that much about the game. It just tells you that person's like, there's so many ways to play this game. It's like chess, but not chess. And this game's not exactly like chess. So I guess I'm in a place where the game both looks good, but I'm also skeptical of the full level of experience and where the design is coming from as far as their board game experience and knowledge, because it just some key phrases and buzzwords and things that make me think that they've dived into the board game world but haven't fully necessarily immersed themselves into it, which doesn't mean that you can't create a great board game, but it does mean that I'm a bit more skeptical whether I should take the gamble on that great board game. And then of course, once you even just look at the price point and what you're getting for it, I think it's a decent price point, but not anything particularly amazing. There's no stretch goals, there's no anything else pumped into it. It just is the game. Here's Boardquest, Tales of Liria, if you're interested or if you're not. And so if you're interested, by all means back it. I am skeptical that it'll hold its value. Moving on, we have Ace of Aces Powerhouse series coming to you from Mr. B Games. This is an older game, I believe from 1981 if I recall correctly. 1,800 backers, $107,000 raised. Mr. B Games is bringing Ace of Aces, a deluxeified new print run that has actual art as opposed to, well, I guess the original had art, the original one was just black and white. This is a very fascinating game, and it does seem, since it's doing well, Mr. B Games basically kind of implied that if this game does well, they'll reprint more games in the Ace of Aces line of games, but for right now we have Ace of Aces Powerhouse. This is a very fascinating not really choose your own adventure. It's a cross between choose your own adventure and rock, paper, scissors, but it's not rock, paper, scissors like rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, but rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, scorpion, machine gun, trenches, bullets, and diving out of your airplane with a parachute on. It's like a whole list of things in this game, combined with choose your own adventure. And if that seems confusing, that's because I haven't told you about the game yet. The game basically has two pilots having a book. There's going to be 2 books, that's all there is. There's 2 books in this nice little slipcase over here, and the books basically give you these maneuvers you can do. And the way it works is you each start on page 170. Why 170? I don't know, because that's what they say that you start on. You start on 170, and you each pick a maneuver. And then from there, you correspond to each other. Well, I've picked this maneuver, so you should check page 117, and then you also pick your own maneuver, so you go to 117, and you see that based on the maneuver you pick and the maneuver I picked, the combination effectively, that's now the page we end up on. But you're both doing this. Effectively, the game is through a system of just lots of pages, programmatically determining how you each acted and therefore reacted. Hence the whole rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, scorpion, machine. I can't remember the things I did before. Anyways, that's basically the idea of the game. So you have like a whole bunch of options on every page. I don't know, you have like 15 different options on every single page, and you're constantly adjusting and reacting and firing and then dropping back and turning quickly, and you're trying to outplay each other, which is a interesting system, just all manifested from a book. So if you're interested in a game system like this, and you specifically have like certain reasons why you want to engage in this one as opposed to like, I don't know, it seems It seems incredibly complicated and both incredibly cool and incredibly tedious at the same time. And ratings, by the way, the ratings on the original game, that 1981 title, is a 7.3 on BGG, which is a good rating. It's like that's a pretty decent rating, all things considered. It's not a bad rating by any means, but also not necessarily a great rating. It seems like this is a really well done system for what it is, but you have to know if this is the kind of system that you want. It's a very specific game concept. And if you want that specific game concept, it'll run you $59. That's basically what it's going to run you. Or there's a retailer pledge as well, but I don't imagine you want that. Or if you want the advanced copy of the game, that'll be $100 in case you want that. There's none left. 60 people all wanted that game first. That's good. That's cool. Anyways, that is basically how to play Ace of Aces Powerhouse. That's basically the game concept, all that stuff. The stretch goals, you know, things being added, upgraded dice, serialized, flying machines, rotary series, all these various things. What's this one over here? Well, being the rotary... Oh, so this is the... I said implied, but it turns out they actually already have the stretch goal. They're bringing the rotary series later in the future, so that's going to be coming to Kickstarter later. But either way, this has been doing incredibly well for Mr. B Games. I'm very happy for them. I'm happy to see this doing well, bringing a very interesting concept back to life with, like, you know, updated art and experience and all that stuff for an out-of-print title from 1981. As far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? Instinctively, I think not, but it's so unique. It's so unique. It's like if you look at the secondhand market on the original one, but that's like a 1981 title, so it's very hard to go with. I think that it's... I would just put it in the risk category. I'm not only say it will or won't hold its value. I think the price point compared to retail is pretty decent, but I do think it's a very unique game with a very unique market. It is doing well on Kickstarter right now. I'm gonna absolve myself of any judgment call on this. It's too unique a title for me to really go by other information on this one. The only thing I can go by is the 1981 title, which is a long time ago. Moving on, we have Forgeflame. 731 backers, $54,000 raised, 17 days to go. Coming to you from Lord Raccoon Games. I had to pause because I always confuse King Raccoon and Lord Raccoon. But we have Lord Raccoon Games bringing you Forgeflame, the third game from them. They had the Sea one, then they had the Dragon one, now they have the Forge one. Those aren't the full titles, those are just the titles I remember. Was it Taverns and Dragons? I think it was Taverns and Dragons. The one before that I don't remember offhand. Anyways, Forgeflame. Explore the depths of Forgeflame's mind, collect precious ore, and forge legendary artifacts. That's the core concept of this game. But you're going to have a bunch of gorgeous miniatures. I mean, say what you want. Lord Raccoon Games, their games look amazing. The art, the production, the miniatures, they look great. And then this is definitely true for this one as well. In fact, these miniatures, by the way, not only do they look great, they actually hold the various gems that they're collecting. Like if you see that little gelatinous ooze over here, it holds the gems in its mouth. And they all have unique ways that they hold the gems, and it also helps track how many gems they hold because the various creatures hold between 1, 2, or 3 gems as they're wandering around this mine. Basically, you start off at the very top of the mine, you wander further down to mine, you try to collect gems, and you use those gems to forge artifacts. You can do that either by the top of the mine or in the center ever-burning forge in the middle of the mine, except it's not actually the ever-burning forge because it actually does run out of fire, so you have to be mindful how often you're using it, and then how often the events will refill the ever forge, or alternatively, you have to just make your way to the top of the mine again because there's nothing left to mine in the center. Meanwhile, there's all these little kobolds along the way who are getting in your way. There's other little, like, you know, totems and adventures and things to find, all these other stuff. But that's the basic idea of the game. There's also a degree of semi-deck building. Each of the characters you bring to your game, you're going to be able to have your own cards from that deck and then combine those decks of the 3 characters you have, or 2 characters in a 4-player game, and basically try to figure out, you know, how to build your deck through your own upgraded cards from your character. It's not like an open pool deck building. You can build your deck from the cards from your character's upgraded pool, and then try to efficiently, you know, collect gems and outmaneuver your opponent, and occasionally make them drop things or stun them or stuff like that, while you try to forge things more efficiently than your opponent. I believe it ends after. I think it ends when you craft your 4th artifact. I think, if I recall correctly, it might have been your 3rd. But either way, that's basically how you play through Forgeflame. But as far as, you know, should you back or should you not, will it hold its value, all of those things. Price point for the game is going to run you either €49 for the base game, and the base game plus the, you know, the Flame and Mystery expansion, or alternatively, you're going to be €60 if you want to get the additional Shadows Unleashed expansion, and the Flame and Mystery expansion is going to be bringing you 2 new characters, and the Shadows Unleashed expansion is going to be bringing you, well, kobolds and totems upgraded to miniatures. So let's go ahead and scroll down and show you all of that over here. So we have, you know, your Forgeflame, Flames and Mystery. I may have misspoken 1 second. No, I lied. Sorry. Scratch everything I said. The core pledge brings you the for Flame and Mystery expansion, which brings you these miniatures over here. Okay, so we got that one. We have the gameplay pledge bringing you the Shadows Unleashed expansion, which also adds, let's scroll down over here, 2 new characters. If I can scroll down, here we go. The Shadows Unleashed expansion brings you 2 new characters for another €15, and then for an additional €30, that's where you get the, or €20 technically, €20 plus, well, for additional €30 you get a bunch of things, but you can get this €20 for the €19 for the 6 Kobold minis, 3 Totem minis, and 6 tokens, but you also get the playmats over here as well. So a bunch of things you can go ahead ahead to get your hands on this one. That is basically going to be Forgeflame from Lord Raccoon Games. As far as should you back or should you not, will hold its value. Looking at their previous campaigns, they generally don't do great on the secondhand market. There usually is a drop off from the price you pay in crowdfunding versus how well it does in the secondhand market. As usual, if you just want everything, you don't want to deal with the secondhand market, this is the cheapest, not cheapest, this is the easiest way to go ahead and get your hands on everything, especially brand new and all that stuff. Versus if you're looking at this as what if it's not a game for me, a little less likely that it'll hold its value. Moving on, we have Everstone discovering Ignis, 617 backers, $34,000 raised, 17 days to go. This is a 1-4 player tableau building, engine building game with multi-use cards, and there are multi-use cards galore in this one. You can check out my review on this one. I have content in the game. I have, in fact, I have Forgeflame, I have this one, I have Inferno, and Dante's Inferno, and a whole bunch. I mean, maybe anything else, I don't know. I have a Black Rose Rebirth, check out my original. I have a lot of content on, well, a lot of the games we're covering today. But either way, we have Everstone discovering Ignis over here. This is a game where you're going to be building out your tableau, and basically you're going to be readjusting your caravan every single time you play. You can see over here the ways this person is building out their tableau. You can place cards on top of your tableau, strengthen the action. If your workshop is free, that strengthens the action. If you place cards beneath your workshop, that strengthens the action. You can place up to 6 cards beneath your workshop, that strengthens the action. There are so many ways you can upgrade and enhance your tableau and increase your actions and make yourself better and stronger in this game, which gives you a lot of flexibility to try to approach the puzzle in this somewhat worker placement, but also a whole bunch of other things going on game. There's a lot of things going on in this one. You can check out, well, a variety of covers from the game, see more about it. That's basically the core idea of the game. And we have $59 for the core game over here, and then past that is just retail pledges. So it's a one-stop pledge over here for $59 to get your hands on the core game of Everstone Discovering Ignis, this tableau building game system. And then, of course, shipping and all that stuff. As far as should you back or should you not will hold its value, skeptical it will. This does fall into the, a smaller indie publisher. You have 617 backers overall. That number will go up before the end of the campaign. They might cross 1,000 backers, but I think the price point for the game relative to what you're getting, I think it's a very solid game, by the way. I really enjoyed the gameplay. I do wish the art, popped more and was more developed in both the cards, the art, and all that, the box and all that stuff. But I do think the game itself is a very, very, very rewarding game with a lot of tableau building. Has some remnants of Dune to it, but remnants of other game systems. I have to check the recommendations I did in that video. But either way, that's Everstone Discovering Ignis. The main problem as far as this one, it does fall into that indie publisher. The price point relative to what you're getting for it, which does make me think this is one that's less likely to hold its value. But also same thing. If you're just interested in tracking it down, this is the best way to guarantee you get your hands in it, and of course support a indie publisher. With that, we have Vampire the Masquerade Chapters Definitive Edition. $192,000 raised, 2,000 backers, 18 days to go. This is Vampire the Masquerade Chapters with a whole bunch of ways to adjust from the original campaign. Vampire the Masquerade is a RPG experience in a box. So basically it gives you in a 1-4 player game, I believe it's 1-4 players, you're playing across a bunch of scenarios in which you're going to be going into, well, anything from combat to interactions to discoveries to mysteries to all these different things you're going to be doing in the experience. Each scenario is going to give you a little board that you set up, and the board is going to give you these characters that you're trying to maneuver, with the characters, and then also interact with characters. You're going to have various engagement points. We start flipping these little manuals and talking to the various characters, which might lead to various other interactions. It might lead to more combat popping up. There might be little discovery points where you're trying to look for clues around the board, and then having interactions with those and making choices and deducing. Meanwhile, you're constantly taking skill tests based on these skills and attributes that you started with, and then continue to develop across the course of the campaign as you go through, you're like, oh, I have 2 points in this, and I have 3 points in that, therefore I have 2 automatic successes, but I also get to roll 3 dice. You're constantly engaging with a variety of skill tests, both for your combat, for your interactions, for your investigations, for all of these things as you go through this RPG experience, with an absolute ton of narrative content and an underlying story and foundation to everything going on in the world around you. That's the core idea of Vampire the Masquerade. The original campaign came with the base game, came with a variety of character packs, a variety of upgrades. The new campaign over here has a whole bunch of things to get into. We start off with, we have the upgrade pack for the first edition, which basically features the upgraded booklets, not all the upgraded booklets, but the storybook, the rulebook, and some assets from the first edition, all offered at the lowest price. The original campaign, while it was generally well received as far as the game goes, they did have issues with errata and issues with the, wards being said the wrong way, pages that direct you to the wrong place. There's I think they say there's 750,000 words of content. And so, while they got most of it right, even a 1% error rate is still a high enough error rate that it became a frustrating experience in some ways to some players. There is an errata online, you can go through it. I only went through the experience knowing full well from the get-go there's an errata online. It is slightly annoying, but not the end of the world if you know in advance. If you didn't know in advance, I can see how it would be very annoying. So that's for $34 over here. You can get most of that stuff upgraded. Not all of it. I don't know exactly what the not all is. They might cover that in FAQ. And then we have the Epilogue expansion for $59 Canadian, around 44 US. We have the Epilogue expansion. That's going to be the new content for the game, continuing on with, I think they said 8 stories if I recall correctly. I believe they said 8 stories, but I have to double check the exact, part of the campaign page. And then we have the Vampire the Masquerade Chapters Digital Edition. For $74, you get the game with basically without all the books themselves. So if you don't want to deal with, if you want to skip all, well, if you want to save money for one thing, and or if you prefer an app, you can basically go ahead and utilize the app, and then they could go ahead and give you a smaller box version without all the printed content for the game, but that means you'll use the app for everything, which for some people, you're like, great, that's awesome. And for others, you're like, no, I want the physical copy of the game. But the good news is you still have that option. This is basically a way to save money, but get that version of the game, of which 159 people are currently backing that option. Then there's the Deluxe Edition over here, which is basically $249, $185 to dive into the definitive edition of Vampire the Masquerade, tweaked, reprinted, all the stuff that you don't need the upgrade pack, you don't need the app, you could use the app, it's free, bringing you all that stuff for $249, or again, $185 US. And then we have the all-in for $289. We have 189 people backing this currently, $289 for absolutely everything for the game, all the new content, all the old content, all the stuff on Vampire the Masquerade. So, lots of ways you can go ahead and get your hands on this stuff. I will say, again, similar to what I said for Dante, kind of know yourself, know how you engage with the system. You can spend a lot of money on this game, but do you need to? Are you diving into it with all those characters? Are you going to experience the various roles of all the characters you're trying to get your hands on? Are you going to play through it again, where, granted, you can absolutely make different choices and have different things play out differently, depending, like, there are scenarios when I've played through this game, and again, I have a review content or first impressions content on the game, but there are certainly scenarios where I may have read, like, 8 pages in a 60-page book, and then the scenario's done. But how differently will it evolve as you go through it again? Do you want that? Do you feel you're actually going to engage with that? Do you need all those characters and all that stuff? Same questions for Dante. How often are you going to engage with this? And do you need the all-in, or is a base copy enough? And then, of course, the app is a different question as well. That's basically that. As far as should you back it, though, should it not, will it hold its value? As far as holding its value, it likely will. This is one, again, never a guarantee, but despite the issues with the errata, this game is well received enough that if you look on the secondhand market, for the most part, people are getting what they paid for it, or sometimes more for the game. There are exceptions. There are people who are getting less than they paid for it, but I'd say across the whole, most people are getting back what they got, what they paid for the game, or more on Vampire the Masquerade Chapters, which makes me think it's a fairly safe bet for you in general. It's a well-liked, well-received game, and this version of the game is only going to be better because even if there are mistakes, and mistakes are always possible, there will at least be fewer mistakes than the first edition. Moving on, and lastly, we have Biome. A nature-themed board game. We're at 15 minutes, so like not that over the 5 minutes, but by the time we're done, it's going to hit an hour. But I had fun. I hope you had fun. Anyways, Biome over here. Nature-themed board game for 1 to 4 players. $131,000 raised, 2,134 backers, 24 days to go. This is coming to you from, this is coming to you from Linus Games. First created, and Biome is a weird... It's weird. The whole crowdfunding space is weird these days. We have a lot of these companies coming in with games that this falls in a weird space where it's doing well enough that there's clearly an audience here. It is launched with Launch Boom. We'll get into that soon. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, but this falls in a weird hybrid where it doesn't feel like a mass market game in some ways, but it does feel like a mass market game in other ways, and I can't tell what to make of it. I don't know. I can't tell what to make of it. Which for me, by the way, that means it's automatically not a back. For you or not, that's a different conversation. And not to say that's a bad game, it just means that if I'm going to spend money on a game, I want it to be a game that I feel is a fit for me. And if I can't tell what to make of a game, it's just a bigger risk on whether that game is a fit for me or not. I'd rather wait to see it delivered and received by, and see if it's a game that falls off people's radar or whether it's one I want to pick up. Because as usual in life, most things that are good will come back. Maybe you don't get the best deal the next time, but they will come back, and or you can hunt them down the secondary market and pay a little more for it if you really care that much. But this one falls into a weird space where there's aspects of the game that does make it look like a more modern style game design. Then there's these scoring tracks over here which do not look modern style. They have a literal spinner on the game that does not make it look like a modern style game design. They have a whole thing with stretch goals, which is fascinating. If you scroll down over here, I know I'm not focusing on the game that much, but I'm kind of more intrigued by, I don't know, the Kickstarter space right now than the actual game in this case. If you scroll down further on this page over here, there is stretch goals with the stretch goals, and this is where, like, I'm just like, as somebody who goes through a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, my reaction to seeing the stretch goals was I saw, player token at 100,000, linen finish at 150,000, vulture cars at 200,000, 3 new achievements at 250, cloth bag at 300,000, and unique wooden meeples for point trackers at $1 million. This is the point, just to tell you my experience here. When I got to this part of the campaign page and I saw that jump from 300,000 to $1 million, I immediately scrolled down to the bottom to see if this was funded by, or helped or aided by Launch Boom. And it is, which that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, if you are a crowdfunding creator, you might want to consider reaching out to Launch Boom. They clearly do a great job with their advertising, but it made me think this is one of those things where, I don't know, it made me think this is a game that isn't... it could be a great game. It could be a great game. I'm not saying it's not. There are channels that have covered this game. Tabletop 5's cover this channel. I know he's very much in the board game space, covering the types of games that you and I enjoy, and he seems to like it. So I'm not saying it's not a good game, not in the slightest. I am saying that I don't know what to make of this one, and it's doing incredibly well. I'm very happy for them. I don't wish them any ill will, but it does feel like it's kind of one of those games that has been pushing itself into the board game space rather than coming naturally into the board game space, which I think is a good thing for the hobby because it can possibly bring others into the board game space and expose them to the types of games that are here and present and grow the hobby. But that is I think it's a good thing for those people. For me, I'm less certain that it's the game for me. I know I really didn't go into the game that much. I kind of was more interested in the other aspects of the game. As far as should you back or should you not will its value, instinctively I think you shouldn't back it. They do have a limited pledge, by the way, but I will say I've kind of noticed the limited pledges and the way that I don't like them, they kind of seem to be gone for the most part. This does have a limited pledge concept if you back 2 or more copies, or 2 copies, I guess. So they have this over here, 233 left of 250. But that number starts off nice and high that I don't think it's coming anywhere close to them changing and manipulating the numbers. And it's only if you get 2, which is a weird way to do it. So that's just I'm uncertain what to make of that entirely. But either way, as far as Sheev actually not will hold its value, instinctively I think not. But that's up to you. And that's where we are on the campaigns, which means it's time for our picks of the week. Picks of the week. Usually over here I pick 2 picks of the week. The game that I think is the most likely to hold its value, and the game that I am most personally interested in. And this week it's the same game. So usually when that happens I do push one off. And that game would be Dante. Dante I think is the most likely to hold its value and my personal interest pick of the week as far as the game that I just want, personally and all that stuff. But that said, because of that, I will make Dante Inferno my personal interest pick of the week. And for my value pick of the week, I'm going to give that to Street Masters because I think that is very likely to hold its value just based on track record of the original games and the fact that this is bringing you, well, more of it for even less than the original games cost. I think that puts it in a good position for that. And that's what we have as far as all those, which means as far as the campaigns coming up next week, we have the following. We have Dying Light over here. Dying Light with 10,000 followers on the campaign coming to you from Glass Cannon Unplugged. Dying Light bringing you the video game to the board, to the table. I will have coverage in this one as well. You can check that out. And then we also have Flow from Pika Games with 13,000 people following this campaign. Flow from Pika Games, the offshoot company for Fantasia Games, and I will have coverage on that as well. And that has been your 2 back or not to back. We are barely at the hour mark. We're almost there, under an hour, so I'll take that as a win, and then I'll try to rest my voice and go to sleep. But until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I appreciate you being here, and as always, I hope you have a good one. What do cigarettes and squirrels have in common? They're both perfectly harmless until you stick them in your mouth and light them on fire.